With the Toronto Blue Jays setting their sights on being competitive in 2025, that may include bringing one player back who was traded at this deadline, and that's Yusei Kikuchi. Now, some current players on the team, including Alek Manoah, are urging the Japanese pitcher to come back in the offseason, and we've seen it happen before. It's not a common occurrence, but let's say he really loved Toronto and he really wants to be here. It's a legitimate possibility that he can come back. Now, is it smart for the Blue Jays to bring him back? We'll break that down and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. Welcome in everybody to Jays Digest. I'm your host Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse, and we're gearing up now for the end of the season. This is a stretch run for most teams, and for the Blue Jays, it's wrapping up a season of misery and just looking ahead to 2025. And the Blue Jays said that they want to be competitive next season. Now, I don't know if that's a legitimate possibility. I don't think with this current core of players that they can be a competitive ball club next season, barring some major additions in the offseason. I'm talking about spending some serious bread to bring in some players that can make an impact on the field. But unless the Blue Jays go ahead and do that, I can't see them being any better than they were this year. But Nick, what are your thoughts here on the Blue Jays potentially bringing back Yusei Kikuchi? That has been a talking point ever since he was traded away to Houston. He's been very vocal about loving Toronto, and his kid grew up here and his wife loved it as well. She shared a heartfelt message to the country of Canada after he was announced that he was traded to the Astros. So it's a legitimate possibility if his heart desires it, if he wants to come back. But I think I'm open to the idea the Jays are going to have some considerable holes in the rotation that they'll need to fill for next season. I just don't know if Yusei Kikuchi is the right name to bring back if you are trying to be the best possible version in 2025.
Yeah, Jays fans, and we kind of agree. Feel like they got a bit of a steal, a bit of a heist, robbing the Astros, all the prospects they got back. Now, if they can go back in the offseason and get that player back, then you basically got three top prospects for nothing. Let's just dive right into it. So you can see this here, like you mentioned in the intro. Blue Jays players already pushing Yusei Kikuchi to come back next year. And you can see this here. Kikuchi, who's a pending free agent, was obviously traded to the Astros a week ago. The deal seemed to be a massive win for the Jays. We all know they returned Jake Bloss, Loperfido, and Will Wagner, but Peter, we saw in an interview with David Singh, Alek Manoah said, quote, "We have joked with him, hey, go get us a couple prospects," ended up being three, and then come back in free agency. And obviously step one of this is done, and we got a phenomenal return. And we'll dive into that a little bit with Loperfido and all those things. But Peter, obviously this is a kind of a joke at the time, but it definitely could make some sense for the Toronto Blue Jays if they want to go ahead and do that. And like Ben Nicholson-Smith says here, it's rare, but teams occasionally re-sign players they trade away, like Aroldis on the Yankees. Presuming the Jays trade Kikuchi this week, this was last week, the door would be open for a return. And John Schneider even came out and said, absolutely, I would love to have him. And I think that interest is mutual. So this is more than just total speculation. It seems like there's multiple people in the Jays organization that are urging Kikuchi to come home, and depending how he feels, he did say he loved raising his family here and stuff like that, so could make some sense. And whether it makes sense from a Jays perspective, we'll have to see. But I mean, getting three free prospects can never go wrong.
Yeah, no, it makes sense totally, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm sold on bringing him back. I feel like the Blue Jays can do better in free agency, and it's not a disrespect to Yusei Kikuchi or anything, but I feel if there are some free agents out there that the Blue Jays can go target and really shore up their rotation, because even though he is a good arm and he has been reliable over the past couple of seasons, he's not a frontline guy. And if you want to go out and be successful in 2025, which the Blue Jays are seemingly trying to do, or at least they're saying that they're trying to do, you have to go out and get some big names. Now, whether that's in the rotation or in the lineup remains to be seen. You're definitely going to have to address your lineup, because
Yeah.
we don't see a single guy in the lineup day in, day out right now that has an OPS over 700 besides Vladdy and Ernie Clement, who's marginally over that 700 mark, which is about league average. So you have a lot of below average hitters in your lineup, and you have a lot of guys that are just not performing that
Yeah.
are expected to be back next season. So I'm just wondering, where's that production going to come from? The Blue Jays need to spend some serious money and address their bullpen, address their starting rotation, whatever it is. They have a lot of holes to fill, and I just don't know if Yusei is the right candidate, especially with the amount of money that he'll be set to make, probably around like $10 to $15 million a season. So I don't know if it makes sense to me.
Yeah, he's going to be getting a lot of money. And you can see here, like obviously we know that they have Kevin Gosman next year, José Berríos, Chris Bassett. Aside from that, I guess Ariel Rodriguez, you could throw him in there. There's going to be a lot of questions. And Kikuchi said he was grateful to Pete Walker and how he stuck by him through his struggles. His only regret, was not winning in the postseason. His family loved Toronto. His son does not want to move away from Canada. That makes it rough for me. So maybe if there is mutual interest there, it could definitely go into that direction. And maybe they do want to bring him back. But like you said, they need to make some serious changes this offseason, whether that's they need to add another pitcher, they need to add specifically bats. And they did add a bat at this trade deadline in Joey Loperfido. And I just want to throw this out here, Peter, and just kind of have a quick talk about Loperfido through his first handful of games with the Blue Jays, as today is an off day after the series with the Yankees. But Dana Brown, the Astros GM, he said Jake Bloss was the hardest prospect to part with, and he gave some insight on why he traded some of the guys. He says even though Loperfido, is exciting and a really good defender, he still has to figure out what the bat was going to do because he has a lot of strikeouts. Will Wagner, good bat, didn't know where he was going to play, and they ultimately said the biggest guy to part with, the hardest guy to part with, was Jake Bloss, the starting pitching prospect who slides into the Jays' number 3 spot on the top 30 there. What are your thoughts on the deal now? We've had exactly a week ago today, Kikuchi was traded to kind of go over and just think about it. I'm liking the way Loperfido's looking. There's still some holes in his game he needs to figure out, but I think eventually, he's only 25, he will figure those things out, and I'm liking the way this trade is looking, especially if we can get even Jake Bloss, which is the most exciting prospect to me. Even Will Wagner is mashing down there as well in AAA.
Yeah, well, the thing with Loperfido is that yeah, he's only 25, but Vladdy is also
True.
25, and he has a MVP runner-up season to his name, and he's looking like that player yet again. So I think we got to maybe cool the expectations a bit on what Loperfido can become. There's a reason why he wasn't a top 100 prospect or someone heralded as a generational talent. He's got tools. Don't get me wrong. I think he can be an above average major leaguer. But if that's who you're looking for to be your answer for next season, I just don't know if that makes sense. I'm really high on Jake Bloss. I really didn't think it was smart for the Astros to part ways with him because they have a razor thin farm system as well, and they have a lot of injury problems in their rotation too. So I think Bloss is going to be the best player of this deal, and Will Wagner looks pretty good so far in AAA. So we got to wait and see on that front. But yeah, like we've been saying this entire video, like we've been saying pretty much all season, if there's any hope of contention next year, you got to spend big. And the Blue Jays did well in getting rid of a lot of salary for this season. I think they're under the luxury tax now, so they can go out and spend and basically have carte blanche, one more run with this team that they've assembled or run into the ground if you want to go in that direction. But I think they're going to have a chance here to make some waves in the offseason. I think they have to if they want any chance of winning. And maybe even making a big trade, a blockbuster trade, and getting some more prospects and going fully in that direction. That's another way that I could see this thing playing out because right now, as it stands, the Blue Jays need to make some major additions and a lot of them if they want to be a good team in 2025. But if they decide to go in the other direction, I think their farm system can become one of the best because they have some assets that they can trade and really restock their farm with top prospects, not just mid-level prospects like they did this trade deadline. So it's going to be interesting to follow this offseason, but it could go one of two ways, either in the rebuild direction or in the all-in direction, which is what I want to see. But does that include Kikuchi? I don't know. I don't think it does.
Yeah, let us know what your thoughts are on that. I think either way, if they somehow manage to get Kikuchi back, that would be a huge heist for the Blue Jays, at least just from a value asset perspective regarding the trade. But let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on that. We'll see you soon.